Thank you so much for being here. And we've known each other for a little while now, and it's been awesome just getting to know you. And can you just give us a very short background on just where you're from and your band and what's your role in the band?
My name is Martijn Westerholt. I'm from the Netherlands. I started my musical career in the band Within Temptation. And that's still my family's band. My brother is in that band, and my sister-in-law Sharon is in that band. I left that band because of some health issues. I always forget the English name for it, but I got Fiver disease. So it's kind of mononucleosis, I think is the English name for it. So
yeah, I think we call it mono.
Yeah, so I couldn't do that anymore in Within Temptation, and Within Temptation was skyrocketing at that time. So I was relieved that I could leave that circus. Of course, it's sad in a way, but it was really good, and so the contact there is still very close. But when I was starting to feel better, I started my own project, and that's called Delain, which is a little bit back then in the same vibe as Within Temptation, but over the years, of course, you develop your music style develops, and Within Temptation developed in a certain direction, and I developed. So now I wouldn't say it's the same. I'm doing Delain for about 12 years now. So it's kind of my company together with our singer Charlotte, and we have also band members in there, but it's not an equal democratic thing. It's like my company together with our singer Charlotte, and we're writing albums and we're touring a lot, that's my hobby and my job, so to say, my passion.
That's awesome. So it's your company, and are you the primary songwriter in the band?
We have a songwriter team. I think I am the person who steers the direction of the ship, so to say. And I'm one of the main three songwriters, which consists besides me, out of Charlotte and Guus. Guus is not in our live band, but he is involved in this actually from the beginning, and I already know him from my Within Temptation era, because he played in a Dutch band called Orphanage, and Within Temptation supported Orphanage in the first tour. And so we go way back, and the three of us write everything. Right now it's a little bit developing. For example, our guitar player Timo contributes a lot in terms of guitar arrangements. He recently wrote his own song for the band as well. But in general, to not make it too complicated, the songwriting team is me, Charlotte, and Guus.
Cool. Oh, that's really cool. What have you accomplished recently that you're feeling proud of right now?
That's a good one. In general,
even in your career, yeah, even generally speaking.
In general, I'm just proud where Delain went, how it developed. How my career went in general. I think I'm spoiled and blessed with that. But also specific things, the amount of albums we released, also our live shows, how they developed, how much crowd we now get. For example, last year we did a special tour, and we had in the Netherlands 2,000 people coming, but also when we go to England, we have over 1,000 people coming. And I think it's so special when you write music and you come somewhere different where you're not from, and people are listening to your music, and it can be at the other side of the globe. And I think that's really, I feel spoiled and blessed. If people in South America say, "Hey, I love that song," it's special. And I always tell them, like, "Hey, because of you guys, I can do this job." So in a sense, you're my boss because you finance by buying tickets or buying albums. I'm proud of a lot of things.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, you guys have, even in the last few years, I feel like, at least the photos and videos I've seen of your live show, like you guys have really stepped things up a lot. And I'm curious to know, how did that happen? Did it come down to the band just becoming more popular and so you had more budget to work with, or did you just get better at planning things? Like how did that actually happen?
That's kind of the chicken and the egg question, which I think I can answer. I think the first step is, if you know what kind of music you make and you have your record ready, you have the right people behind you, then you have to determine, how can I reach the people I think will like our music? So that means support shows, support tours. Do support tours. Try to reach the crowd of other bands where you think your music fits, your product fits. And that's what we did. So in the beginning, we toured with In Temptation, for example. And with one show, you can reach 5,000 people. And if it really fits your product, then that's a really good investment. I would do it for free. I actually recently did it for free. We did a tour with Nightwish in South America. And I asked them, do you have a support slot? And they said, no, but we also don't have any money available. I said, well, I don't care. I want to do it anyway. And they said, oh, okay. Well, then you're welcome. They did invest something with hotels and that kind of stuff. But in general, it's good promotion and it's a good start because then people get acquainted and you can develop your own fan base. And I think that's the first step: support.
That's really interesting. So when you're saying that, I'm going into marketing land and thinking, hey, that's the same thing as like when I write an ad and I say, if you like this band and this band, you also might like this music. Or, getting on the same, in a Spotify playlist or something where it's a very, segmented theme and very specific theme and that kind of exposure. Only you're doing it in real life where people are physically showing up and they're committed to having an experience in person. And that seems so smart to me, is like really aligning, making sure that you are supporting other bands, not in a completely different genre, right?
No.
Or even in the go ahead.
It's true. It's kind of, if you would do that, there might be some people who like you as well. But it's like shooting with a Canon at flies. Like it's too. You have limited resources at your disposal, so you should make every shot count. And I think it's very important that you reach the right people.
That's super good. Yeah, thanks for that, because I'm sure there's a lot of people going, well, there's probably people listening thinking, well, if I can get onto any bill, that would be good, but it would be much better, like you said, to be very targeted and align yourself with people or other bands where the crowd showing up are likely to buy your stuff too.
Exactly.
And, yeah.
And there's another aspect which is really important. You have to think about the market you're targeting. So I'm not talking about the people. I'm also talking about the countries. You might think, do the countries matter? Yes, they matter, because if you tour in a small country, which is a small market, then it's far more difficult to come back and do a tour there because it's only a couple shows, which is more expensive. So it's far more interesting. If you're a band from Europe, it's far more interesting to support a band in Germany than to support a band in, with all the respect for the country, let's say Czech Republic or Finland, or so yeah, aim for the big markets, the markets which there's a future for you can build on. So, and don't do all markets at the same time. It's also a little bit conquering countries, and in some countries, for Delain as well, in some countries we do a better job than in other countries in terms of ticket sales. And so you really have to think about, okay, where would I like to support a band which fits my product?
Okay, let's talk about that for just a second. Say I'm going to plan a tour and I'm thinking, where should I play? I mean, how do you determine where you should play? What is the most important, maybe 2 or 3 things that would help you decide that?
Where, if you can place your music in a certain niche, in a certain genre, then you have to see which country this genre is popular.
Okay, how do you find that out?
Yeah, you know that by looking at your plays, for example, your Spotify plays or your Deezer or Apple Music plays, where do they come from? Where do my visitors on my online media come from? I think that's an important aspect. And another really important aspect, which you also should not forget, is what if those people are from a market where there is no money? If they can
Right.
spend money, how can they buy tickets? So it's far more interesting if the market seems to be healthy in the US to tour there, or in Europe. But if it's in Africa, then that's more difficult. People don't have as much money there.
Yeah. Now, what about countries like South America? Because I know there's such incredible enthusiastic fans in places like that, but there's also a lot of poverty in some of these countries. So what about regions like that?
Well, for example, we invested a lot in South America and still don't see the financial revenues from that. But for us, it's a little bit different because we are further in the process. So for us, it also matters globally for our profile to make ourselves available in different markets. But when you start, I think South America is not a good market to start because people don't buy merchandise.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, if you go to Argentina right now, the peso is going down, which means if your fee is being paid in pesos and you are from the US or from Europe, your fee will be very small, but your costs from the people you take with you will be the same because you pay them in dollars or in euros. So South America is difficult, but it's not all bad because well, remember Brazil did really well economically a couple of years ago, and the people in South America, the crowds we experience, they're nuts in a good way. So it's a lot of fun to play there, and I'm still convinced you can make it work. But also for selling records, for example, South America, not a good market. So yeah, those are indeed aspects to think about. And South America is a good example. It's a very difficult market.
Yeah, that's exactly my understanding of it as well, just from an online digital marketing side of it, because I sell all my music digitally. I've never done a live tour, and I do not target those countries. I just don't, because my thought process is that they don't have the money to spend. Plus, I just hear from fans who write and say, "I'd love to buy your CD, but they can't." I get some trickling in here and there, but not very many. And so that's been my thought process. It seems to me, though, I feel like I've noticed a lot of bands recording like live show, like videos of their shows there because the fans are so nuts.
Exactly.
So you can use some of the footage and everything for promotion in the other countries.
Yeah, true. No, because the vibe is fantastic. And those people are really nice and very enthusiastic and very supportive. So it's in that regard, it's great. But to give you another example, when we go outside of the venue, we see our own merch being sold. So people just make the products and sell them on the streets, which is of course highly illegal. But
Right.
what are you going to do? I mean, nothing. So the only financial money you can make is from selling tickets. So you need to, and then we come to another point in the whole strategy of building up your live product, and that's play, 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 play. Which means you have to, very simple. It says it already. You have to play a lot. And that's what we did. We played a lot the last 10 years. We played like in targeting specific countries, but that's the way to build up your live product as well. When you go to a show, you never say, "I'm going to listen to a show." You're going to say, "I'm going to watch a show." Mm-hmm. So it's very much about, the music is of course the most important thing, but you have to show something, and that's difficult. That's different for every style of music, of course, but it can be something really small. It can be the X factor of the artist who is singing, like what she radiates. But it can also be a show, like a band like Rammstein, like the German industrial metal band. That's not only a concert anymore. It's theater. It's like a whole experience. And even if you don't like the music, you can go to that show because there's so much going on. It's insane. So those are also aspects you have to think about. But then again, when you just start, of course, there is no money for that kind of stuff. But you can still do it in the small things.
What are those small things that you think that you'd recommend? Hey, if you have like a super limited budget, but you want to make it look special, what are like some of less costly things that make it look special? Is it just different color lights? Is it just like fog machines? Like what can make it look good?
Yeah, it's the lights. I think lights are a tool to guide people where to look and to guide people to the vibe which fits the music. So that's an aspect. But you can even think smaller. You can think in how your band looks together on stage. If you're a singer-songwriter, it's a different thing, of course, and it's about you. And then you have to think about, what do I say? When do I say something? How much do I say? Because if you say too much, you can break the magic. If you don't say enough, then you can come across as not being personal to the crowd, too distant. So those are aspects which are very important in a live show. You have to consciously think about. But sometimes I look at a band and I see a guitar player only look at his guitar and that's it. And another guitar player moving around and do a lot of things, and it doesn't fit together. And it also depends on the music. If you should move around a lot and go nuts, if you're playing a ballad, of course, that's silly. So you also have to think about your movements, your presentation. And also there, of course, think about it, but also think about how spontaneous it has to be. Because if you think everything over, then you might lose that factor. So yeah, it's just, there's a lot to think about, and it starts with those small things, which is not about money, which is about how you present yourself. And your music.
I love that. It's all about the experience, and you're confirming some of the things that I've been told by other live stage performance experts. I've actually had a guy on the podcast specifically talk about these sorts of things and how everything's very planned, but then you can be spontaneous within that plan and that sort of thing. So I love that you're totally confirming that as like a musician who does this for a living. One of the things that actually drives me nuts that I see sometimes is band members who don't interact with each other at all on stage. There's no interaction. It's like they're there by themselves and there's like, they don't smile at each other. They don't interact. There's no, like, it's like they just showed up for their gig and then went home. And it always makes me uncomfortable as somebody watching that. It makes me think, do they not like each other? Because I feel like they don't like each other.
No, that sounds familiar. It's for Delain, for example, we talk about those things, because you have to. It's important to have fun together on stage, because how can you expect your crowd to have fun if you cannot convince them you have fun? So if you don't believe yourself, how can you expect them to believe you? And that's a very important. And making music together is interacting together. And that means you need to have contact together. So yeah, I totally agree. That's a very important aspect.
Yeah, definitely. So, hey, when you go to plan your next tour, and let's say it's like a bigger tour, what do you start with? Do you start with like, what's the big vision around this? Or do you just start with a set list? What's the first thing you start working on?
First, I start with the timing of the tour. When do I tour after I made an album? Of course, if you made an album a couple of years ago and now you're going to tour, that's pretty late. On the other hand, if people are craving to see you, then it's a big thing if you're finally going to tour. So it's the timing is very important, and how you present it, that is very important. And of course, where you would like to tour. again, coming back to the countries and the market you want to target, etc. So I look at that, and then the tour itself, because the longer you make a tour, the more efficient it will become in terms of costs. Also, what is very important, how many days in a row do you do? If you, for example, have a lot of off days, it will cost you money because you have to pay your crew. You have to pay, if you're touring with a tour bus, you have to pay the tour bus, because even if it's parked, it costs money. But if you play too many shows in a row, you will get tired and you will get exhausted. So the quality of your shows will suffer. So the routing is important, the timing is important, and when we have that done, and the package is important. If you play with other bands, do you play with a co-headliner? Do you play with a support? So it's very important to have the right package, because this is highly influential on the tickets you will sell. So those are the first aspects I look at. And then we go more into detail. So which crew will we take with us? And are we going to share crew with other bands who are on this tour? If there are any other bands on the tour, who do I want to share? I don't, yeah, there are also people you perhaps don't want to share. I determine the set list by looking at the flow of the show. So there is a part where we really speed things up and push the throttle, like the gas, and really put a lot of power in it. But you can also take it back, so to make contrast in the show. Because if you do main speed, go 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 the whole time, then there is no contrast in your show, and it might be a lot for people to take in. So where are you gonna put the slower songs, and where are you gonna put the party songs, the songs people like? So yeah, make a flow in your set list. That's very important too. And then of course your production. Am I gonna take lights with me? What equipment am I going to take with me? Because you have to drag everything along, or you have to rent equipment, and that costs money. Right. So yeah, so only in the later part of the whole process, you actually make your live product, your live production.
Okay, that's interesting. That's a lot of planning before you get to your set list. Like, that's actually very surprising to me to hear how much detail and thought goes into the whole tour before you even think about the songs. That's very interesting. That's a lot. That's a lot of, you have to have a lot of information to even get to that point.
True.
So, yeah.
Also, how much fee are we going to pay everybody?
Right. And how do you determine that? How do you, like, I mean, if I've never done a tour, for example, I would have no idea what to pay people.
Well, it depends. For example, if you have a band with session musicians, it's different than when you have a band together and it's kind of a mutual company. And then you can say, hey, we cannot pay that much, but this is very good for the development of our band, of our company. So we will see it back later. You cannot do that with session musicians. Well, in a certain degree you can, but it's different, of course. So that's a very important aspect. And then, of course, the crew itself. Some bands cut on merch people. I think that's the stupidest thing you can do, because where does the money come in? Selling merch. That's especially in the US, that's a huge part of your income. Never cut costs on your merch person. Make sure it's a good person and does his or her job well. Another very important person is the front of house engineer, because the sound engineer can totally make or break your show. Because if they mix, they do a poor job mixing, and you did a great concert, and I played every note right. can still be that the concert isn't good because people couldn't properly hear the proper instrument at the right time. So I think that's all. I would never cut on the front of house engineer. Very
Okay, and to find this person, how do you do that? Do you just look at, you know, their resume of the bands they've done previously, or how do you find that person?
Yes, that could be it. Just by talking to fellow musicians, fellow bands. But of course, also there it's kind of sensitive because, hey, I like your front of house. I like your sound engineer. I want to book it for a tour. But a band would not like that because then they cannot book the front of house engineer for their tour. So it's, I always like the policy of investing into people and let them grow with you. And that doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. And with us, it did work in quite a lot of times actually it worked. So you talk to people and see if they have the right mentality to develop themselves as a front of house engineer. And it can start with going to a local band and see how a front of house engineer is, and then talk to this person and say, hey, I got a whole tour coming up. I'm looking for somebody who tours with us frequently. Are you interested? Can we talk about it? And you can also talk about the money aspect then, of course, because you give perspective to a person there as well. And the other thing I think is very important, that you regard everybody equally, that you're doing the job together. Together you make the live product work, and together you develop. And that's how you can develop, what's the right word in English? That people are really going for it, that they are that they are connected to you, and they see the band as their band as well, and their
So there's ownership.
project as well. Yeah, I think that's very important.
That's cool. That's really good. Tell me about roles and responsibilities for a second here. When you're organizing this whole thing, is it, you know, the leader of the band's job to put all of this together, or should you get like a tour manager? And what are the differences between those kind of roles? Is it better to do it yourself when you're starting out, or is it worth the money to invest in like a tour manager, something like that? Tell me about that.
Well, of course, you cannot know everything and you cannot do everything. However, it's my experience that if you want things to be done correctly, you have to do it yourself. That's what I think. That's like with every company, I think with every company in general, a small company, if you want to do things the right, or want to get things done the right way with the least amount of costs, you do it yourself. If you're capable of doing that, of course. And if you're not capable, then of course you can see if you can get somebody with experience and talk to them about it and see you can learn from that. Do as much as you can yourself. In the beginning, it will save costs and you have control over things. And for example, if you are talking to venues for shows, then make sure that everything you talk about is on paper, because then if people, when you come there and for example, there's no PA system, now that's your responsibility, PA system. And no, I got it on paper, we talked about it, and we agreed that you would deliver the PA system. Those are the kind of things, it's called like, prepping the show, the production prepping. And with bigger bands, you have people to do that, tour managers, production managers to do that. We have production managers for that. And they report back to me if there are problems or if there has to be an okay for costs. Then they say, hey, we can do this and this or that. Is that okay? And I say yes, or I say no. And that's how it generally goes when you're a little bit further down the road. But in the beginning, I would say do as much as you can yourself. And that goes in general. I don't believe in band managers when you just start. I never take a manager serious if they manage a starting band, because a starting band needs all their money, all their money to invest in the most crucial things, which I think a manager is a luxury in the beginning.
And where should a band be investing all their profits in the beginning?
Equipment, tour costs. Hey, we can do this tour with this band as a support, but yeah, there's no fee available, or the fee is not enough to cover all the costs. Well, let's finance it from the money we saved. So I think those are very important, efficient ways to spend your limited resources, not on commissions of managers.
I like that. Yeah, that's super good advice. Really good. Do you have any ideas for like how you could maximize profit from a tour? Like, let's say you've done all the right things, you've planned everything, everything's kind of figured out, but now you're just like, okay, I think I'm going to break even, but let's say you want to do more than break even. What can you do to maximize profit at each show?
Well, you can of course cut a stage engineer if you have one with you, which means you have to do more yourself. Which means, for example, you have to break down your equipment yourself on stage while the crowd is watching. We did that sometimes. It cut costs. It cuts travel costs. It cuts their fees, of course, of those engineers. But there's a downside. You have to work harder yourself. And it doesn't look that nice if, for example, if you watch a movie and at the end, while the movie is done, you see the actor taking down the props. It's kind of but yeah, on the other hand, when you cannot afford a lot, then you should do as much as you can yourself, but not too much. That's always kind of a balance too, and that's difficult. Travel cost is a very good one. Are you staying in a hotel? Are you renting a tour bus? Of course, renting a tour bus for 4 shows is not really efficient. Go by car and sleep in a really, really cheap hotel. Those are very basic things. You can cut costs. Share crew, again, as I said before, you can share crew, or you can choose to ask a local light engineer instead of taking a light engineer with you. The downside is a local light engineer, you would not have met the person in person, and this person will not know your show as well as your own light engineer if you have a light engineer. Those are all kind of things. There's also technology, other ways of cutting costs. We, for example, program our ground lights ourselves. So we have it through a MIDI system, through a computer, running along with our backing tracks. So if we don't have a light engineer with us, at least we have some ground lights who do exactly the right thing at the right moment. But we don't have the cost of a light engineer.
That's really cool.
So yeah, so you can think of, another thing is, if as a European band we tour in the US, a lot of bands rent a drum kit. I think that's a waste of time and a waste of money, because if you tour the US for, let's say, 4 weeks, to rent a drum kit will cost you around $1,000 to $1,500. Well, you can buy a drum kit for $1,000 to $1,500, and you can sell it after the tour. So that's another way to save costs. You can include your fan base. Hey, we need a place to sleep. If I put you on a guest list and you can join us on the show, can we sleep in your house? That's another very simple thing. We did it with storage. We have fans who supported us by storing our US equipment in their place instead of going to storage. We even have somebody who likes our music very much, and he was a retired firefighter. He was a retired mechanic, and he was still a firefighter, and he had his driver's license to drive a bus. And we asked him, hey, would you like to tour with us? And for him, it was a lot of fun, a dream come true to tour with his favorite bands. And for us, it was fantastic because we didn't have the cost of a bus driver. So you make each other very happy. And those are very smart ways to cut costs.
That's awesome. I think I met that guy when you guys came to Vancouver.
Yeah, he's fantastic. fantastic guy. Yeah.
That's cool. That's brilliant. And what about maximizing selling merchandise at each show? Like, is there specific things that you can do that make it extra special for fans? Or is it just like, you don't really know how much people are going to buy, you just make it available? Like, how do you
But
maximize that?
when you start, you don't know, of course. When you tour a lot, you kind of, you know what to expect. You know how much you should buy, how much shirts you should take with you. But when you start, you don't know that yet. So then, and there's the other thing. When you start and you, for example, do a support tour, there are limitations as well, because you cannot, most of the times, you cannot sell with cheap prices to compete with the headliner. The headline band will say, "What are you doing? You should you should equalize your prices to our products." And they go even further. They can say, "Okay, you're only allowed to sell 3 kind of hoodies or 2 CDs. You are allowed to sell 5 or 6 products." So there are limitations in that regard. You have to keep into account. I would sell. Yeah, look at I would say I would sell albums the first tour, because you want people to get acquainted with your music. The thing with albums is they don't have a really good profit margin,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to see it as an investment, because you want to get people to know your music. So you want them to buy your CDs, your albums. But when you're a little bit further down the road, then it's, yeah, you look at what has the most margins. And if you sell really small products, like for example plectrums, like for guitars, or that's not really smart, I think, because the margins there are low too, and people want to take something home with them to remember the show. So it's smarter to sell a T-shirt. And the T-shirts who sell the best in our genre, at least, are T-shirts with album covers on them. I basically don't like them. I like nice designs in T-shirts, but they sell best because that's what people want. Also, look at the color. Black sells best in our genre, at least. White doesn't sell that good. So those are the kind of things you have to think about to maximize the output of your merch.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And these are things that sometimes you just don't learn at all until you're just doing it, and then you figure it out, right, over
True.
time. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, no, I appreciate, you've answered so many of my questions here. I think we got through all of them. And even the ones I didn't ask, you already answered in some of your responses. So that's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. And I know it's going to be, it's a huge value to me. I mean, I've never done any of this. And so I'm just soaking it all in for the day that I decide to tour. And I know people listening, I mean, this is just wisdom from somebody who does this for a living. I mean, we didn't say this, but this is what you do full time. Like, you are, a successful musician who tours and makes albums for a living, and you live off of that. So really well done. You've done very good, and you should be super proud of what you've accomplished in your career. And if you're listening and you have not heard the band Delain, definitely go check them out. Really cool. How would you describe it? If anybody's not heard of the band Delain, how would you describe your band?
I would say we make pop songs, but we put a heavy coat around them with distorted guitars. There are symphonic elements in there, a lot of contrast with a lot of stuff going on, and another time it's not a lot of stuff going on, only piano and vocals, but then there's a full orchestra going on. So yeah, I would say symphonic metal, but symphonic metal makes it so classical, and we make pop songs. So yeah.
Cool. I like that. It sounds like we could work on your micro niche a little bit and get like a really succinct title for that, because I don't know that there really is a genre out there to really describe it yet.
No, some people say, "Oh, you make gothic metal," and I don't agree. I think that's not it.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
You're right. It is different. So that sounds like a fun conversation we should have later, but I wanted to thank you so much for doing all of this and answering all these questions. It was really enlightening and really appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Awesome.
And good luck everybody with their musical careers and their live activities.
Awesome. Cool. All right.
But let me not keep you from your next
Okay.
interview then.
Yeah, well, it sounds good. And we'll keep in touch.
Absolutely. We'll do that. And good luck with everything.
Thank you. You too. Have a great trip back with Robin, and congrats to you guys.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Okay. All
Okay,
right.
take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.